In this video, I'm going to look at a demo program with Flask WT-Forms. Okay, so I have in Visual Studio Code, I've set up a virtual environment, a VENV, and in that VENV, I have installed Flask, Flask WT-Forms, and SQL Alchemy, though I won't be using SQL Alchemy at this stage. Okay, so this is the folder. It's not activated right now, but I have the folder and I'm going to bring in this uh, WT form. So where's this? There's my VENV that I'm using. I'm going to just paste it in there. So I gutted anything previously in this VENV because this is just the one I use for demos, and I'm going to paste that folder in there. Okay, so now there it is. Okay, so what do I want to do? I'm in the VENV. If I weren't in the VENV, I'd go to open the folder and go to the VENV and select it. If I didn't have a terminal, then I would go to terminal and open a terminal. And I am going to, when we installed the VENV, it gave us the scripts folder, and so I want to activate. So I'm going to call a script that is in the scripts folder, and it is activate. And for me, that is a PowerShell script, and I've given myself permission to run PowerShell scripts. So now I'm in an activated, I can see by here down here in the terminal, the green VENV. So it is an activated VENV. I want to move to where my files are. So that is CD change directory WTF underscore intro. Now I am in that folder and I have uh, two Python files and two subdirectories. And the static has a style file. I'm calling simple CSS. In templates, I have three HTML files. I'm going to have a form where the user can enter some data. I'm going to have a handler of that form to sort of just pretty much just display, maybe do one little calculation and display some information that the user submitted. And the form and the form handler have some common features that are going to come from the layout. And then I have two Pythons, and one of them is going to define what's going to be on my form, and the other one's going to be my routing. So I'm just separating my routing from my form. Okay. So I want to look at the routing one because that gives me my hint here of how to run. So I'm going to copy this. I am in the folder. That's important that I'm in the sort of right location. Control V, paste that. So I'm defining what is the Flask app? What do I want to run when I say Flask? And then I want to do Flask run. And then I'm going to control click on this URL, and it gives me this form. There is a text input for me to enter something. There is a drop down. I have three drop down selects. I'm going to choose Python. I'm going to choose a color. I'll choose cyan. No, I'll choose magenta apparently. And then I'm going to pick a size. I'll pick medium. And then I worked, I don't know, 50 hours this week for $10 an hour. And so this is the form, and that's going to take me over to the handler. And so there is the name I entered. There is what was behind the scenes, the PY standing for the Python I chose. Here's the background. Here's what I sent. We'll see when when we deal with the drop-down select, that there's something you show the user and something you're behind the scenes. So the PY and this pound sign FF00FF is what was behind the scenes there. And then here's my size medium, just the M. And then and I worked 50 hours for $10 an hour. And uh, I did the calculation and I did it twice. Again, because there are sort of two server languages we have to play with in this game, and one of them is Python and the other one is Jinja. So I did the calculation, including that I worked overtime, and I did my calculation both in Python and in Jinja to sort of just to show that I could. Okay, so that is Control C to stop. But for now, that's what we're looking at. Let's start. Well, I've got the app part, which for me means the routes. And I am going to serve up a form. So I need to so what I run is app, and I have to bring in the other things into an app. So I'm sort of bringing in from this other file, form WTF intro, I'm bringing in simple form. Let's just pop over there for a second, and I see that there's a class. I'm taking their Flask form and sort of extending it to my simple form. And over here, I am importing that simple form. I'm going to be using some other features of Flask. So this was sort of the form and a WT-Forms thing, or I often just say WTF. I'm going to be using Flask to set up my routes. Of course, I'm going to put things on some HTML pages. So that is my render template. I use this URL somewhere on the shared layout to connect to the style. I'm working with going back and forth. I have a form, so I'm going to like request and submit information back and forth. So I have this request. And then I don't want a default route. So I'm going to redirect the default route. I'm going to have basically one route. I'm going to redirect the default route, which we'll show in a second. And then we're going to go and then have one route for both the form and the handler and just we will, depending on whether as the user they're sort of seeing the information for the first time, or they've hit submit, or they're coming back from the submit. So the system will figure out which page to show based on sort of our posting status, but it will be one route. Okay. So we have to sort of have some security. There is a thing you set up called the secret key in these Flask apps. And so you have to make something up. And I always say Wyatt Duck. It's just some Marx Brothers reference. All right. So here's the default route redirected to the simple form route. Now here's the simple form route. You do not have to name the function handling the route and the route the same, but I often do because then it simplifies that I don't have to pay as much attention. I can say, if I'm referring to the function that handles the route or the route, if they have the same name, I don't have to worry about that distinction. Okay. But I'm going to have this route, and there are methods for sending back and forth information, get and post. And we're not going to worry about security right at this stage, but we're probably posting, which is the more secure anyway. Okay. So we are making a form. So we're instantiating a simple form. We brought over again simple form from the other file. We opened that file briefly and we saw that there was a and we sort of extended the WT-Form class to our own class, and we called it simple form. We imported it here. We imported that module here, and now we are sort of instantiating uh, something, an instance of the simple form class. And now, as we said, this one route is going to handle both the form and the handler. So we have to know sort of what the status of the page is. Are we showing it to the user to fill in the data, or are we responding with the data? So if it's submitted, that means that the page that we're coming from the form going over to the handler. And while I'm saying that, that's what this was about, so that that process is not sort of interceded on, that somebody's not sort of injecting themselves into that process, that you know um, that you really are that to go to the handler, you really are coming from the form. That is what this sort of secret key is supposed to be about. Okay. But if the form is submitted, if the user has entered some information and is passing it from the form to the handler, then um, I'm going to the form. The request has a form, and that has that information built into it, and I'm calling it result. And again, we showed, and then I can pass result on to the handler, but I can also work here in Python with the result. So again, one of the part of the form had this salary calculation, and now I'm going to show how I can do the calculation here in Python. And then I'm going to also repeat the calculation and do it in Jinja just to show both possibilities. Okay. So the result hours, so result comes over and it's sort of like a dictionary. All the items in it have um, key values, and so then we saw what it looked like. We saw there was a place for hours and for wages. We'll see where those came from when we look at the form, but we actually showed the page, so you've seen them, you know they exist. They're coming back over. Usually what comes off a form, even if you have in HTML an input that you specify is a number, still what comes off the page is typically thought of as a string. Again, even if the input is a number input, what comes back from almost any form, almost any entry on an HTML page. And the same thing goes like for consoles. Usually like input is sort of assumed to be string. And then if you want it to, if it was a number, you know it was a number and you're going to cast it and you want to use it as a number, then you cast it as a number. So we're not just going to display the hours and the wage, but we want to do a calculation. So we're casting. And I'm saying the hours was an integer, so I'm not going to say you can work 25 and a half hours. You either work 25 or 26 in this example. And then there's some wage, and then I made that a float. One thing I want to show is that in the form WTF, in that Python over in the WT-Forms, we're going to make a distinction between integer and float. But over in the HTML, they're just going to call it number. So we'll show that when we sort of look at the code behind the HTML page. Hopefully I'll remember to do that. Okay, so bringing over from the form, again, we are submitted. So this is submitted. So there's information from the form. We're grabbing the hours, we're grabbing the wage, we're casting them. We're asking if they worked over 40 hours. We're doing this time and a half thing. Otherwise, it's hours times wage. Okay. And then we are moving on to the handler. So here is the render. This is, again, in the data submitted part of the if. And we're going over to the handler form. We're sending it a title, we're sending it a header, we're sending it the result, which is all the information in the form, and we're sending it a salary, and I'm even sort of like formatting it here. So I'm sending over, since I've already done the calculation, I'm going to basically send over a formatted string. Here is outside of the if. So if the form was submitted, I'm going here, and this is, I don't have to sort of say else, but this is effectively an else because I have a return here. So if this was true, I return and go to the handler. Otherwise, I'm coming here. And this is taking me to the form in the first place because it's the part of the if that was where I'm not submitted. So I need to get the information. So I'm going to the form. And I'm sending it a title and I'm sending it a header and I'm sending it the form, this time more the blank form. Whereas up above here, it was the request dot form. That's the form with the information. Whereas down here, the form is the blank form established by the WTF file that we're going to look at next. So there we are. There's again, the default route was directed to the other route, and then the other route is handled by two pages depending on the state. Do we have information from the user or not? Okay. Here is the form. This is where we establish what's going to be on the form. So this is so we're using WT-Forms, and then we further specify what parts of that we are using. We saw that we entered a name, so that was a string field. We had a button at the bottom that we pressed, that was a submit field. We had some drop-down lists, those were select fields. And then we had a place to enter the hours and the wage, and so that is the integer field and the decimal field. Okay, so we import all those things we're going to use. We are establishing a string field. This is a text input once we get over to the HTML. In the parentheses, the argument in the parentheses is going to be the label. So that is going to correspond to what we show on the page. So we have access to a label, and then name is going to be sort of behind the scenes coding. So again, what's inside here is what we show the user. What's out here is how we will refer to it in code. Okay. I let them choose. Let me just run it again. It's been a while, so just to remind you, there's a place for a name, a place for a language. Now let's do JavaScript this time. A place for a color, a place for a shirt size, hours, and a wage. Okay. So the next thing is a language. That's going to be a select field, a drop-down select in HTML. The first thing here is the label. So this is what you're going to see there it is. This is what you'll see here as the label of the dropdown. And then this is how we refer to it behind the scenes. The U indicates that, because I think I originally took this from an old version, and I used to have to specify some strings that might be in Unicode, but now I think in Python 3 they're all in Unicode, so you can sort of take it away, it won't matter. So again, that is the label. This is its coding name behind the scene, and then in a drop-down select, you have a set of choices. And the choices come as a list of tuples. Okay, so here's the square bracket for the list. Here's the parentheses for the tuples. The tuples have, these tuples have two parts. It is what you are going to show the user. So this is going to create for you automatically a drop-down select on the HTML page. And in a drop-down select, you have a set of what here they're calling choices. Over in HTML, when we look at it, they're going to be called options. And there's going to be what you show the user, which is the text between the open option and the closed option. And then you have what you work with behind the scenes, which is the value of the option. Let's show that while I'm blathering on about it. So if I right click here and view the page source, we'll see what was generated by this. And here's a label, so that says programming language. Here's the select, which has the ID and name of language. So when you're working with a going back and forth between a server, then the name of the input is what's important. And what we call the code in WTForms, we called it language with a small l, and so it was given that name. And here's the option value CPP, and then between the open option and the close option, the C++. So there is the two parts of the tuple, the sort of what you see, the text, and the value. And then there were a set of options. Okay, so that is the first drop-down select with languages. Here's just another drop-down select with colors. And again, I took out the U this time because I didn't need it. And that gave us our color, our set of colors here. And then we come to our sizes, but this is not, this is a list of dictionaries. So this is the data that we're using. So I'm saying there is a list square bracket of dictionaries, curly brackets, then have an abbreviation and a name. And so there's XL for extra small and S for small, etc. Okay, then what am I doing next? So that is not I'm not making the element. This is just sort of data in the form of a list of dictionaries. But next we're going to use a list comprehension, sort of a slick method to make a list from another list in Python. And we're going to put it into the form we want. So the select field wanted a list of tuples. We had a list of dictionaries. So we have basically so we have a square bracket that's common in the list comprehension. We have a so here's a list. Sizes was a list. We're looking at each element. X is an element in the list, which happens to be a dictionary. And we're looping over the elements of the sizes list. And then we say over here sort of what we want out of it. You can also do some filtering. I'm not doing any filtering. I'm doing more changing the format. I'm sort of doing a casting, if you will. And what I want is, again, list comprehension takes a list and makes a list. So I had a list of dictionaries, but I wanted a list of tuples. So I put here the tuple I want. And what do I want in the tuple? I wanted the abbreviation to serve as the value. I wanted the name to serve as the text in the dropdown. And I called that new list of tuples, size choices, and then I made it the choices of my select field. And then, so here size is the label, and size choices is that set of choices, that list of tuples. And then the whole thing was named size with a small s. Here are my hours. this is an integer field. Here's the label hours. And then I wanted, if you just make a text field uh, or a number field in HTML and you don't see anything more, it comes up blank. So let me stop it and start it again so you'll see that. So I did not specify any value for the name, and so that text field comes up as empty. But here I'm starting with a 20, and down here I'm starting with a 10. And that is coming from this render underscore KW. So that is a dictionary of attributes and values that I want to use in addition. So I'm going to make a number field because it says integer field. So I'm going to make a number field. And in addition to just that normal setup, I'm going to add that it has a value of 20. For the wage, I'm going to specify that it has a minimum of 725. I don't want to go below minimum wage. It has a step of 0.05, and it has a value of 10. So there's my 20, and there is my 10 that you can see. Let's go behind the scenes, view the page source. Here are my hours. So its ID and name are little h hours. The type was number. Again, at the HTML stage, we're not making a distinction between integer and decimal or float. But there's the value. That was that extra thing added by that sort of render KW. And then over here in the wage, I added a step, and so there's the type number. I added a minimum. I added a wage, a step, and a value. I think it's alphabetizing the attributes. Okay, that seems to be alphabetical order. ID, min, name, step, type, value. Looks alphabetized to me. Okay. So, and that is so I should not be able to take this below 725. Now, if I come in here and type, I can go below. But if I'm using the drop down, if I'm using these little arrows to the side, I can't go below 725. And if I use the little arrow to go up, I'm going up by 0.05s. So that's what we've done with those extra render key W's there. The step was a nickel. We had a minimum. We had a value that we put in there in the first place. And we have a submit button. So we have a submit field. This is what the submit field is going to say. This is how we're going to refer to it. Okay. So we had app. It had the routing information. We have form. That what has the form information. Now we've got to look at the HTML to put these things on the form and then the handler. So here's the form. The form works with this layout. There's some place on the layout for a title. There's some place on the layout for a header. There's some place for content. Let's have a quick peek at the layout. So that starts with the doc type. So that's the really fully formed HTML. But here we see some Jinja, a place for the title. Here's some more Jinja, a place for the header. And here's some more Jinja, a place for the content. Now right now I am looking at this as HTML. So I don't see any nice color coding of my Jinja. I can change that. Let me see what extensions I have. I have the Better Jinja extension installed. So I should then be able to see, let me go back to Explorer. So then I can come down here to the language mode. Now, the language mode by default when I have an HTML extension is HTML, but I can ask it to do Jinja X. So there's Jinja HTML. And so that gives me that combination of, so now it knows that it's both HTML and Jinja mixed and gives me more color coding. I mean, the color coding is really just fake. It's not real, but it does sort of help see things and the organization of things. Okay, so that was the layout. Yeah, there's the end of body. So that's pretty much done. Over to the form. I have in the form, I, I don't specify the action that's sort of going to be taken care of for me. We're going to do post, which is the more sort of hidden, secure exchange of information between the form and the handler. I'm going to use that secret key here to sort of make sure that the information that the handler receives is coming from the form and not some other place. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to use, here's my form and name and label, and form and name. And I specified a size. I didn't need to do that. So again, the over here in here, we have the name of this string field as far as code is concerned, it's small n name n, but it has a label which was capital N. And then so we have here, we're going to display the label, and then we're going to display the thing itself, which will be a text field. And there it is. There's the name with the capital N. Here's the text field. And then I put each one in its own little div. That was just, I didn't have to do that. I just did. Here's the language label and the language, the color label and the color. There's no indication here whether this is a text field or a drop-down select. That was decided over in the Python. Over here on the HTML, I'm just saying I want it, but it's been predetermined what it is that I want, what kind of a thing, by the WT-Forms code over in this other Python. But there's the name, there's the language, there's the color, there's the size, there are the hours, there's the wage, here's the submit button, done. Okay. And then I want to look at the handler, what happens over on the handler. Again, we're extending the simple layout, which we've already looked at. It wants a title, it wants a header, and then it wants some content. This is a Jinja if. So curly, sort of Jinja's always in this weird combination of things. So it's curly is sort of a Jinja thing announcing Jinja, and then it's a pound sign indicating that it's within Jinja. It is a comment. Okay. We have some, again, within Jinja, we normally sort of separate the curly percent from the curly curly. The curly curly is when we have sort of some Jinja information. And if we have more Jinja control, then it is curly percent. So we're asking, like, did they send a name? And if they sent a name, so if there is a result name, so the result is the form, we renamed the it result. And if there's a name, then we're going to say, hey there, hi there, ho there. Otherwise, we're going to say no name. So did I fill in I don't have this. So if I send it over, it says no name. But if I go back and I say Edgar Degas, now it says Edgar. So that is the if. Okay. I'm just showing you different ways of sort of concatenating within Jinja. So I can just say, hey there as normal sort of HTML code and then put the Jinja in. I can say I can sort of write some code in Jinja and sort of bring in the result name, or I can sort of format. So I can insert this string or format this into the statement. So just different variations of concatenation with Jinja. Okay. And the no name and the ndef. Okay. Here's the language. I'm just displaying the language. Here's the color. I'm displaying the color. And again, you're displaying. I'm not going to display red. I'm going to display the hex code for red because that was the value. I only send the value. If I want both the name and the color, then I have to work harder. We'll do that another time. I can do other things on the page. So I can have uh, I can use the color I sent to create a color. And this looks like it doesn't, then it's wrong. It's giving me like squiggly underlines, but that's because it went reverted this page. It's looking at it as HTML. And one more time, I can, because I have better Jinja extension, I can ask it, I can tell it that it is Jinja HTML. Then I get some more color coding. And now this is understood because it's a mix of HTML and Jinja, and now it's understood. Okay. So again, it's what you send can be used on the page. What you send over from the form to the handler could be used on the page and not just simply displayed. So when I go over, I can show the hex code that I sent over, but I can also use the hex code to set the color of this div. I'm displaying the size, I'm displaying the hours, I'm displaying the wage. I can do some uh, styling or formatting here. So, and I can also the formatting, this like point two formatting is the formatting of a float. So I sort of take my result, cast it as a float, and format it. So that's because I wanted two decimal places, and that's a float thing. I had to, but the result that wage is a string. So I had to take the string, cast it as a float, so that I could format it as a float by giving it two decimal places. Okay. Now we had done the calculation of the overtime salary in Python, but I want to show that it can also be done in Jinja. So here I am casting the result hours as an integer and calling it H. I'm taking the result wage and casting as a float and calling it W. There was some if. If the hours were over 40, then I'm going to introduce a salary. So I'm setting a new variable S and performing the calculation and displaying it. If I didn't work over 40, then I'm doing a different calculation and displaying it. Um, and then uh, and then here's the what I just sent over from Python, and that was already calculated and formatted. So I just spit it out on the page. So you can do things in Jinja. There you've got these two server-side languages, the Python and the Jinja, and they whatever you can calculate, you can format in both, you can calculate in both, and we showed that. Okay. I think I showed everything. The CSS, there wasn't much to it. Some color and background color and font, uh, some styling of the form, some styling of a div, input. Uh, this option nth child even and child odd was to make the drop down choices sort of vary slightly in background color. That's what happened here. The label, I made an inline block and gave a width. So all of these were all labels, and we gave them inline meant they could be on the same line as the input, and the block meant that they could be given a width so that they're all the same width, so that things sort of lined up nicely. So that was what that was about. The numbers were right justified. So these numbers, the standard things are left justified, but these were numbers. And even though it's a number input, they are still automatically left justified unless you specify. So we right justified them. And then this was specifically the submit button. And so we made it sort of bigger and bold. I don't have very good style, but I don't care about making it look nice. I mean, there are like CSS files that people have established that you can bring in that look a lot nicer than this. I'd rather have it be a little bit clunky, but have my own style so that, to show that I understand style. So that is it. I think I've shown you all the pieces now. Thanks for your attention.